In this tutorial series, we're going to build this CRUD real estate app in many different ways, so you can make an informed decision how to go about building your next full-stack React app. Welcome to DevWorld, my name is Sam. In this tutorial series, we're gonna build this real estate app, so let me show you how it works before we do anything else. So here we can add a new listing, so let's say house 1, we give it a price, 100,000. And then we choose a location and then we add. So we can see this listing has been added. We can also delete listings. We can filter for different locations, so Los Angeles or New York. And then also what we can do is edit these listings. So if you go here, this will be put up here in this input, and we can change that, for example, here. And now we can see our listing has changed. We will build this app in many different ways. First, we will use functional React components, then class components. Then in one example, we will use useState. In the other example, we will use the context API. So we will do it once the wrong way. So if you have learned context API on YouTube, you most probably have learned it the wrong way. So we're going to do it the wrong way first and then the right way. Then we will have a mix between context API and useState. Then we will also use Redux, which is something similar like the context API, which comes from React directly. Then also we're going to use different backends. With the first backends, we're going to use Node and then also Firestore. So you can see we have a lot on our hands. But we are not going to write out the code for this app all in this tutorial. Rather, we're going to do a code review. So we're going to go through the code and see what exactly is happening and what will be changed between the different methods. So you can learn exactly how to do an app like this in many different ways. That's the thing I missed from many YouTube tutorials, that you can only see one way how an application is built. But in reality, if you build your own app, especially if it's a little bit more complex of an app compared to many YouTube tutorials, you're never really sure what's the best way for your specific app. So that's the idea of this tutorial series, to give you a good overview what's out there and what you can use. So here you can see the GitHub repo of this project. We have different branches. So if you go here, you can see the different branches. We have master, which is the same as empty project at the moment. Then we have React classes, then normal React, so normal means with functional components. Then React context, where we have the state in the context. Then the wrong context type, where we use the REST API, which we build out with Node. Then the other one is the REST API, which is the right context way, or the right way to handle the context API. Then we will also have a mix between the context API and then a local input state, but you're going to see what that means in the respective video. And then, as I said, the React classes. So what you want to do if you want to start with this project is go here to this repo, go to code, and copy this URL to clone it to your local system. So let's copy that here and go to VS Code. Now in VS Code, you want to go here to source control and then clone repository. Then put in the link up here and click enter. Now I want to store that in documents, but you can store the project folder wherever you want. So I will select repository location. And now you can see the repository has been downloaded and we can open it up here. Now we can see we have the React app, which was created by Create React App. We have the source here, the App.js, the index.js, but it's all empty at the moment. We have just a little boilerplate, so you don't have to write out everything. But what you can do if you want to switch between the different branches, you can go to command palette, so view command palette, check out to, and then here you can see the different branches. So this is the branch I'm going to open up now. And here we can see the full app, which will work. What we have to do now to initialize the app is go to terminal, new terminal, and then we want to run npm I to install all the dev dependencies and dependencies in the package.json. All right, it's now finished installing. Let's run our dev server to see the app. So we can run npm run start. All right, and this is our app. We can see it looks like before. In all the branches, it will always look the same and have the exact same functionality. So here we can see our listings. Just a little note about the images. If you would want to handle images here, so an individual image per listing, this would take a lot of more work and it's not really necessary for this tutorial. So that's why we just have a placeholder here. So let's check the app. Let's add something. And we can see it still works. We can delete everything. We can filter. So it works great. All right, so let's go back to the code and let's review the code, what exactly is happening in the code here. So the code is quite basic if you have basic React, JavaScript understanding. So we have the components here, and the App.js pretty much bundles all of our components. And then of course we have the index.js, which comes like that from Create React App. So let's go to our App.js component. We have the real estate header and the real estate listing, which on our app is this one. So all the way this blue part here. So both blue parts are the real estate header, and then the real estate listing is down here. So if you go to the components, we can see we have these folders, real estate header and real estate listings. Let's go to real estate header first. Here we have real estate header, which is the higher order component bundling the different states and the two components, real estate inputs and real estate filter, which in our app is this. So the dark blue is the real estate inputs, and this is the real estate filter component. And we can see we pass different states here. So if I open that up again, we have title, so the getter and the setter of title, price and location. And then we can also see if is edit. So if we edit a listing, so if you click that button here, the state will change to is edit from false, which is the initial state, to true, but we will see that afterwards a little bit closer. Then we have the clear input function, which clears this input. So if you click here, and then we have handle add or edit click. So if you click here on add, or if it's edit, you can see this changes to change. So that's the function that handles this button click. Then in real estate filter, we just have the query and the handle query change, which at the end of the day is if you change something here, that's the function and the getter of this state. Then of course we have the respective CSS files, but in this tutorial we don't really care about the CSS. So let's go to header to inputs first. So we can see the props that have been brought in here with the object deconstruction method. So we don't have to write props dot set title, we can leave that out, and we don't just bring props in here like this, but we will deconstruct the values or the properties already here in the object deconstruction, which is a feature of JavaScript. Then here we have the button content, which I showed you before. If we edit a listing, it will say change. And if we don't edit a listing, so if it's just, if we want to add a listing, it's add. And this comes from is edit. So if is edit is true, because we clicked here on edit, then this button will change. So if you clear that, for example, this is the difference between is edit is true and is edit is false. Then here, pretty simple, we have the different inputs and labels with the values set to the getter and with the onChange method set to set title. So to the setter, we have that for title, price, and also location. A little add here to price, we could put that to number. So we can only add a number here, but in this tutorial, we don't really care about error checking and input validation. So that's why we just have it like that. Of course, in a real application, we would need to make sure that here we can only add a number. Down here, we have a select with the different options. So you can see if you go to our app, we have this location select, where you can select between Los Angeles and New York. And we can see this comes from locations, which is getting mapped to each location and will return an option with the location title. This locations comes from a constant, which we set here, which is the reference for all the locations in our app. So not just here, but also this filter select will also reference just these locations. So we can see we have good code splitting so that we only have these locations in one place. What we do though is hard coding this default value, which is to choose location. So if you go here to choose location, we can see this is hard coded. That's how I like to do things, that we have the non-default values as a separate kind of entity, which we hold in constants. But the default values we hardcode in the select itself. And of course, down here we have the buttons with, of course, the button content, which is this up here. So either change or add, and then also here the clear button. All right, then let's go to the filter. So this is the real estate filter. It's pretty easy. We also have a select here, and we can see we also, like this is this element, we can see that the default option select locations is different than up here. So here it says choose location and this says select locations. So that's why I like to hard code the default options and keep the real options in a combined value. So here we can see the value of the default options. It's just an empty string. And here we can see that's exactly the same thing. So if you have no option or the default option, I rather would have to say we have an empty string. And here, of course, we take in query and then handle query change as an on-change handler for our select. So this is pretty much it about the real estate header. I hope you could follow along so far. So let's go to real estate listing. We have here real estate listing, which is the highest component, so the highest order in this component tree. Then we have cards, and then we have the different card components, which is detail, image, price, and title. So let's go to real estate listing first and close up these ones up here. So we can see this highest order component only returns the real estate card, which is wrapped in a div to give the styling to all of the cards. And then we will map through the listings, which will be brought in here again with object deconstruction as a prop. Then we have also handle edit click and handle delete click. So if you click on this button or this button, these functions will be fired. Then the real estate card, we can see we have here the real estate card image, the real estate card title, the real estate card details, which in our case, we just have the location, but we could add, for example, bedrooms or the area or something like that. But here in this example, as I said, we just have the location and then of course the real estate card price. And all of this data will be again passed in as props. So we can see here data comes in from real estate listing as data. So the listing itself will be brought in here as what we call data here, and then data will be passed on here. And then, for example, for the title, we have data.title, or for the location, we have data.location. So that's how we bring it in all here. And then the rest is pretty basic. So we just have, let's go from top to bottom. So real estate image. So we can see we use a static image, so a placeholder image. Of course, in a real application, we would have an individual image for each listing, but here we have just the placeholder. Then we have the different props we take in here. We just have the image and then the edit button and the delete button. Then next is the title. Here, this is the easiest component of all of them. We just take in the title as the real estate title. Then the next is details. So details, we have just the location, but we could easily extend that because we can see we have an real estate card details detail wrapper. So what we could do is just duplicate that, save that. And now we see we have a second detail here, which, as I said in the beginning, could be a bedroom or something like that. But let's keep it like that. And that's also a pretty easy component to understand. The only thing that's a little bit confusing is all of these long class names here, because we use something that resembles BAM, which is a CSS naming convention. And then the last thing, of course, is the real estate card price, which is also quite a basic component. The only thing we do here is get the price, which is type of number, and put it as a local string. So we get these nice kind of 1000 separators. So that's why we do that here. If we don't have that, let me show you. We save that. We'll just have this number, which is hard to read. And then of course also we prepend USD as kind of our currency. So that's pretty much the component tree of our app. At the end of the day, not something very, very complicated. So let's close that up and close all of these windows. And then let's go to App.js. This is where all the magic happens with all of these methods. So let's go all the way to the top here. So we have React, useEffect, and useState that we import. Then of course the CSS file, and then the both higher order components, which we take in here and then we return at the end of the day. Here we have the initial state, which is just kind of the dummy data with the ID, which is type string, price, which is type number, location, which is also string, and title, which is also string. So we'll have that as dummy data, but of course in a real life application, we will of course have that as kind of a REST API we take in, which is a topic for a further video in this real estate app tutorial. So now we get to the real interesting part, is how we exactly manage all this state in this CRUD application. And then of course in the further video where we'll discuss different types or different ways how you can actually manage this data and all of these functions here. So let's go through the React hooks we have up here and then also the methods down here. So if you go up here, we have our real estate hooks. We have one that's query. So whatever is put in here that's the query, which we set when we change the value here. So when you just click here, we don't have to click another button. It's just an on change handler. So if you change, it will be automatically changed here through the set query. But we will have a look at the query change method here in a bit. Then we also have listings. So listings is the initial state. At the end of the day, it's an array with objects. So how we can see here. So it's our base listings. Then we have also filtered listings, which is an empty array in the beginning. So if we don't have a filter here, so if the filter is set to the value empty string, this will be an empty array. But we'll have a closer look how that behaves in the methods down below as well. Then we have a state which is called isFiltered. So if we filter something here, this changes from false, which is the default value here, to true. So if you have a filter here, this is true, and if we have the empty string, this is false. So if you have the default value, if you remember, this will be the empty string. So let me show that to you so it's really clear. So let's go here and then let's go to filter, and we can see the default value, which is select locations, has a value of an empty string. So that's what I mean if I talk about empty string. So let's go back here. Then we have the isEdit value, which if we click that button, isEdit is true. And if we don't have that here, so for example, if we clear it out to being false again. But how we handle that, we can see in a bit. Then we have title, price, and location, which is pretty easy to understand. This is just if we add something in here, these values here will be changed with this setter method. And then we have the current listing here. So if we edit a listing, so if you go here and edit, so this specific listing will be put in here as current listing. And I can see that we set this wrong to an empty string. This should be an empty object. And then one difficulty we have with this app is if we, for example, have a filter set, Los Angeles, for example, and we want to add a new listing. So let's say house, price, 100,000, and then choose a location, for example, Los Angeles, and add it, that it will be added here, even though we are filtering the results. And that's why we have this current listings here. So if it's filtered, so if you have a value here, either Los Angeles or New York, so if this returns true, we use the filtered listings, which is this one. Otherwise, we will use the base listings, which is pretty much our base state. So this is where we have all the listings, no matter if they're filtered or not. So if you don't have that, so let's comment that out. And let's go down to here where we pass the listings to the real estate listings. Let's put in here listings. And of course here too. And then if we go to our application and for example select Los Angeles, we can see nothing changes because we never actually change the value of these listings when we change the query. Because if we change the query, this is the method that makes that happen. So handle query change. So let's open that. So if we have a value coming in from the filter select here, we will set isFiltered to true. And if we have the default option, which is an empty string, this will return false. So we will set isFiltered to false. So if you have an empty string, this returns false. And if we have some kind of selection, either Los Angeles or New York, we return to true. And no matter if it's filtered or not, we will set the query to whatever we will put in here. So that's what happened when the query changes. Of course, you might now ask yourself, so how do we actually set the filtered listings? Because you can see we never set filtered listings here because we have the method filter commented out. But we'll talk about that a little later. So let me now show you what happens if we have filtered listings and we put that in down here where we just now have listings. So let's put that in here and let's go to our app and we can see we initially have no results. So if we filter now, for example, now we have the Los Angeles results and the New York results. But if you have no value, we don't get any results. So that's why we have this check up here. If it is filtered, because we set filtered here to true, then we just take the filtered listings. Otherwise, if it's not filtered, we take the kind of base listings, which we will always have. So I hope that makes sense. So let's reset that all again. All right, let's close that up again and let's go through the easy methods first. So we have clear input here, for example. So if we bring that in a little, so if you click on the clear button, this method will be executed, which will set edit to false, all the inputs to empty strings, and then the current listing to the empty object. Then the handle edit click is what happens if we click on this button. So this is the method that handles that. So we can see here that we filter all the listings, and where the listings ID equals to the e target.value. So this is the value coming from the button click. If that equals the listing.id, then we will get back the current listing, so the listing that we clicked on. So let's check that out, what exactly happens. So we console log that item. So, and if you put down here the console, and if you edit that, we can see we get our listing, which is nice home 1. And if you click here, we get our listing, and this should be nice home 3. So that's what's actually happening here. So let's delete that again. Then also we set isEdit to true. So our app is in what we could call an edit mode. So we know that edit is clicked at the moment and that these fields are filled with this kind of listing. And then we set the current listing. So if you remember this one up here, which is set to an empty object in the beginning, we set that to item, and we get that from the first item, because of course this will return an array and this will always be just one item. And then we set the title from item.title, and then set the price, item.price, and then the location, the exact same thing. So that's how we make sure that we bring in whatever value we have down here, we bring that in up here. And then handle delete click. This is a very easy one. We just take all the listings, filter through the listings, and where the listings ID does not equal the e.target.value. So if you click on this delete button, we get an event target and value. If that not equals the listing ID, we will not return it. So at the end of the day, we will have an array of the new listings without the listing we clicked on. And then we will set all the listings to this new listings array. And then we have this handle add or delete click. So if you click on this button, this method will be fired. And here we can see we have isEdit. So if our app is in this edit state, let's say, we will edit current listing, which is a method down here. And if this not is the case, so if we are not in isEdit mode, we will have the new listing and use the method add listing with the new listing object. So the new listing object is pretty easy. We will have the title, location, and price, which comes from up here. So from our React state hooks, and we will put that in our object. The only difference is if we edit, we take the current listings ID, and if we add a new object, we will just generate a random ID with this math random function. And we can also see that we have price here put in as a string. So string is coming here from this input element. And with this plus, we can convert the string to a number type. So again, if we have isEdit, we will use the edit current listing method with the new listing that comes from here. And if we don't have isEdit, then we will just add a new listing with the listing object here. And then no matter which, if we have isEdit or no, we will clear the input after clicking this button. And here we can see the edit current listing, which you take all the listings. So the listings coming from this state, and we map through the listings. And when the listings ID equals the current listing.id, then we return the new listing, so which will be put in here as a parameter. Otherwise, if the current listing ID doesn't match the listings ID, then we will just return the listing. This is a very common practice how to update an element in an array. And then here in the add listing is a pretty easy one. We just have the set listings, and we take the new listings, and then we spread the old listings afterwards. So we have the new listings before and the current listings afterwards. So this is all pretty much basic, let's say, React and JavaScript handling of everything. The interesting part really comes down here to how we use the useEffect. So the useEffect is a hook where we can use if we have side effects in our React functional components. And the difficulty I talked before, which we have with the filter and with all this CRUD functionality up here, is that we have to make sure that no matter if we're here in filtered or in a non-filtered kind of state of our application, that we are still able to add and edit and delete our listings here. So let me show that to you. So if we are here in Los Angeles, we can easily delete here, and we can see that the deleted element has been gone. And also, let's say if we are here in New York and we edit this element to home 333, then this really changes here, and we can see the changes no matter if we're in this filtered or unfiltered state. And we can do that in two different ways. We can have a filter method here, so where we have a filter, then we have the query, and then we set our filtered listings to this filtered listings constant, which we set to listings, filter, and then if the listing location equals to the query. And then if we have no queries, that means if we have an empty string here as a value, which will return the query to false, then we just set the filtered listings to the empty array, how it is here also as an initial value. So we can see this is our filter function. And at the moment we have the filter function. So this is exactly the same thing as we have in here. We have that at the moment in the useEffect. So let me show you why. Let's comment that out. And let's just use the filter method here. So let's save that. And now, of course, if we do anything, nothing really changes. Or actually, we even have no results because let's go up here. If we handle a query change, we set filtered to true. And if we have is filtered, we will use the filtered listings, which at the moment is still this empty array because this is just our initial value. So of course, we could have listings here, but then of course, nothing will happen. So now in our handle query change, what we could do is we could call this filter method with an argument of eTarget value. So with the value argument of whatever is put in here, so either Los Angeles or New York. And then in our filter here, this will be put in as a parameter and everything should work again. So let's save that. And now we can see our app works perfectly fine. But now what happens if we have Los Angeles here and we delete something, you can see this is not gone. So if we go here and we search for nice home for, now it is gone. But if we are here, we can see even though we click here, it's not gone. The same thing with edit. So let's just refresh the app again. Let's go to filter Los Angeles, edit that home. Let's change that to home 22. And we can see nothing happens. And if you go here to our default option, we can see here is home 22. And this is the exact reason why we had this filter method in our useEffect. So let's reverse everything we did. Let's save that. And now we can see we have our useEffect. So what does useEffect actually do? So the useEffect has this dependencies array. And here we can specify when a value changes, so either the query or the listings, that this function here will be fired. And that's a huge advantage because we can use this side effect so for example, if the listings change or if the queries change, that this function will be run, which at the end of the day will set our filtered elements here. And then the key that it now works is that we have the listings as an element in our dependency array. So if the listings change, this method, so this function will be fired. So what does that mean if our listings change? So our listings change, for example, if we delete an element or if we edit an element. So if we do this, for example, no matter if we here in our filter state, it still will work because useEffect is this intelligent kind of function that will see, the listings changed. So let's fire that function because then we have the listings. So the current listings, the updated listings, and they will go through all of them again and just checks if the query is the listings location, and we'll put that in down here automatically without us having to do anything manually. And that's really the magic of the useEffect hook. There is no real elegant way how we could do that otherwise. So of course, if for example we have our handle query change here, we could also set our listings to the new listings first, and everywhere where we would have kind of a change of our listings or our query. So in our handle query change, in our edit and add functions, we would need to set the listings to the new listings and also the query to the new query. But with this useEffect, we can handle that very elegantly just in this way. Just to show you what happens if we remove the listings from the dependencies array. It will behave exactly like we don't want it to, so like we had it before. So if you have Los Angeles here and if we delete something, even though it's deleted in the listings array, so in the kind of the base array, in the base listings, it will still be appended here because it's not changed here in the filtered listings. So here in our current state in our listings, this is already updated. So nice home for is not here anymore, but in our filtered listings, not yet. So that's why we have also the listings in our dependencies array. And then the last thing I want to show you is kind of this error message you've already seen. So this one, no results. So if our current listings, so remember this is the ternary operator we have here, current listings is either filtered listings or listings. So if that equals, so if that length, so if the array length equals to null, we have this no results. And we will use that with this AND operator. So if this equals to true, so if the current listings that length equals to true, then we also return this kind of JSX element. Otherwise we don't return that and we just ignore it. We could also do it this way with the ternary operator. So if you have current listings dot, of course we have to wrap that in curly braces, current listings dot length equals to null, then return, let's say the h1, no results. Otherwise return this. So if you comment that out, we can see it will still work. Of course, we would need to add this styling, but I just wanted to show you that we can also use a ternary operator to achieve the same result. But I think it's a little bit more elegant if we have it in this way with this AND operator. All right, that was it for this first video. I hope it wasn't too long and I hope you can follow with everything I said here. Let me know in the comments down below if you like this style of video. In the next video, we're gonna look at how we can refactor that to not have all these functions in just our app.js, but we'll refactor it in our context API, where I'm gonna show you how to do it wrong. So you most probably, as I said in the beginning, if you learned it on YouTube, you most probably learned it in the not correct way. And then I will show you how to do it in the correct way. So I think that's going to be a very interesting video for you to see. So make sure to subscribe to not miss that. And also if you want to add something, I'm always appreciative on any comments you're going to send in the comment section down below. So yeah, let's hope to see you in the next video.